Hello everyone. Welcome back to Summer's Daughter Volume 8, organized by the Rotary Club of University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. This series is all about true stories and true conversations about gender, equality, and what it truly means to live in a world where women are still treated differently. Today, we have someone who truly walks the talk when it comes to creating change. Ms. Melanie Gulathilaka. She's a consultant, researcher, and co-founder of Climate Action Now Sri Lanka. And she's been doing some incredible work connecting youth, climate, and gender issues. Hello, Ms. Melanie. Welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have you with us. So let's start from the very beginning, your story. When you look back at everything you've done so far, studying, researching, working with young people, and stepping into advocacy, how did you end up this far? And was this something you always wanted, or did you just slowly push your way towards here without even realizing it as
First of all, thank you so much for having me. And to answer your question, it's definitely the latter. I did not have a dream of, doing activism or becoming an advocate or anything. How it happened was, I think I kept moving away from what didn't really align with my values and what felt like, things that were not really working for me. I worked at corporate jobs, telecommunication, banking, insurance also for about 7 years since leaving school. And there I didn't really like the culture, the corporate culture, and it really felt unfulfilling. And also, it didn't really make sense to me, like when you think about life and what you do is you're basically spending your years and your time. And at the end of the day, if the only thing that you're getting out of it is a salary, it doesn't really serve you in the long term. Yeah. So I wanted to I wanted to change that path, and very luckily I managed to join Good Market. It was this it's this curated space where you prioritize well-being, basically health and well-being over profit. So seemed like something different. I actually found the job advert on Facebook, and so I really liked the team, and I worked there for a few years. And after that, I worked in few small businesses. Again, they were trying to do either eco-friendly, or they were trying to find a solution to a problem that is there. Then I was very lucky to start working at the organizations that I'm currently working in. I work with a local NGO called the Law and Society Trust, where they work a lot with farmer, fisher communities, minorities, and really do work with people on the ground. So it gave me really good understanding on, the actual realities of the people. And I also work with Greenpeace now. Climate Action Now Sri Lanka started somewhere in 2018 or 2019. That was because we realized that activism was needed because climate change was not an issue that we were really focused on. But so it has been quite interesting, and I think I'm really lucky and somewhat privileged to be doing what I really love doing as well.
Yes, I think that's something we can really take from you is the fact that you really sort of listened to yourself and you really sort of drove towards your passion and working towards what really meant for you. I think that's really important for a lot of us, just anybody. That's something that sort of is something that's very powerful also, and not a lot of people have the space also to get into that. So I think that
So actually, one of the things is I didn't know what my passion was until I started doing things, and I realized that I don't really care about what I'm getting out of it, but I'm really giving my 100% into it. But at the same time, being able to do what you are passionate about also comes with privilege.
Yes.
If I had more family burden, if I had more responsibilities, then I wouldn't be able to take the risks I took. Moving away from a corporate job into a social enterprise or a small, working in a small company is not a risk that everybody can take.
Yes.
Right. So I was quite privileged as well, being able to do that.
Yes. But with privilege, that doesn't exactly mean just because you're privileged doesn't mean you're high up there or something else. And that's something that a lot of people think when it comes to privilege. But doing something useful with the privilege that you have and doing something for the community, I think that's also very wholesome and very self-satisfying also.
Yeah, that is actually true. And I actually come from a working class family. I grew up with a single mother who worked very hard. And I mean, I would say that, like, we are really high up the social ladder still. But we are okay now compared to when I look back at my childhood. Like, we are definitely doing better. But and privilege is not always having money also. It's also sometimes having connections, right? I was also privileged to go to a good school in Colombo, which also means a lot of doors were opened for me, right? So it's not just like, money and wealth, but it's also sometimes connections, the social connections you have, and also the amount of responsibilities, I guess,
Oh, yeah.
Mainly because I come from a very small family, my only responsibility is my mother. So that means I can actually take risks, right? But it's not the case for everyone. Yeah.
So thank you for that very honest introduction of yourself, I'd say. So your second question being, if you're okay with it, we'd like to hear something a bit personal. Have you ever faced or witnessed gender-based discrimination, whether growing up or in your work? If so, how did that moment actually shape the way that you understand the world and also the work that you do right now?
So I think when we talk about discrimination, also it's important to understand that gender-based discrimination is also layered, right? Like I said, for me, I think, again, most of the places that I worked in, corporate sector, gender-based discrimination was an issue. It was something that would be taken seriously. So I haven't really faced a lot of gender-based discrimination, but that doesn't mean it never existed either. In a boardroom, when you give your opinion, are they really going to take you seriously, right? Or your opinion is just listened to and then they move to the next subject. Like, that has happened countless times. Like, when a discussion is happening, you bring out an idea, but it's just like you're given enough space to say it out, but it's not processed out. States over processed after that, right? So those things are there. And also, like I said, my mother also did this like really smart thing, I guess, at that time, that teaching me English from a very young age. So that also meant that because I spoke English and I was a woman, I would get some opportunities which would, like, tick two boxes off at the same time. Right? Oh, that's true. But that doesn't mean that, say that, somebody who come from outside of Colombo, who won't be really fluent in English, but who would have like wealth of knowledge, would face much more discrimination than I would have faced. And at the same time, all of the type of discrimination that exists in the country and in our society, right? And, women not being able to go to Hotiripur in Srinagar.
Yeah.
Like, from that point onwards, to the point of being able to, travel a lot at night, or always having to look over your shoulder to make sure that you're safe. I think it all falls within the same spectrum, but at different levels. I know that, like, we talk about gender-based violence differently from gender-based discrimination, but violence also happens as a result of discrimination because you look down or you think that, women doesn't deserve the same amount of respect as the other genders do, or men do, right?
Yes, I think that's sort of a very holistic approach to this also. And also, I think that's very important because we tend to sort of always move towards workplace harassment and stuff like that. And that's what's usually talked about. Because again, I think it's the whole privilege scenario there also. Yeah. But the thing is, it starts at the very tiny thing till you don't really think about it in your daily life. So that's sort of, it all accumulates. How we look at things as a society also.
Definitely, right? Like, from assigned gender roles to how we preserve, how we look at women, right?
Yeah.
From the objectification, it all comes from this, it stems from the same thinking.
Yes.
And even when we talk about feminism, I think a lot of the talk nowadays, especially with corporate advertisements or corporate activism, right? It's all about empowering women, getting more women into the workplace, breaking glass ceilings. But we completely forget that how women are oppressed in this society exists in so many different levels.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same oppression that we see pointed towards minorities that is also pointed towards women. And it's also the same viewpoint how we sort of neglect environment. We neglect women too, right? So it's this, I think it's also important to sort of look beyond these corporate slogans and really understand what liberation is yours.
Yeah, and also I think the tiny things you can do, maybe it's not like corporate activism sort of thing, but the thing is, what you can do by yourself to sort of send the message out there is something that's something that's doable. It's not something that's, huge and you can't achieve it. Yeah, something you yourself can do at some point.
Exactly that. And I think right now we see in society a lot of sort of confused understanding about what do women want,
Yeah.
They want equality, but are women okay to carry heavy stuff? Or, it's like, why are we getting this so wrong? Because if you look at the main problems women have is that they are not safe, they're not, right? We have to constantly be scared for our safety, yeah. Right. I mean, if I'm going somewhere alone, I don't have the, I can't just put my music on and just be free.
I had to make sure put the music on and also have all your other senses around.
Yeah, it was clear, right? I'd always be sure that nobody's following me, am I safe, all of that. And the main thing is if we can make a society, if we can create a society that is safe for everyone, women will be safe too, right? So when we say equality, what we basically asking is equal right to exist, equal right to be free, equal right to not be scared, right? But you're taking everything quite literally and be oh, all right, equality. So you go and lift over this heavy stuff.
Yes. So thank you so much. Okay, that's a very different perspective that we have from Ms. Melanie. And moving on to our third question. One thing that we usually talk about in our podcast and through this project is how gender-based violence isn't always physical. Sometimes it's hidden in the simplest everyday actions. From your perspective and experience, what are some of the subtle ways gender equality shows up among young people today? Like the catcalling, the jokes, backhanded compliments, unfair expectations, and those unspoken rules about how women should act or dress.
Yeah. I think not just gender-based violence, but violence also can be divided in three forms, right? Usually we see this very very visual type of violence where there's physical type of feminine abuse. And there's also structural violence, right? Where you have violence within systems, how systems discriminate people. And then you also see violence within society, right? So as an example, if we take, like you said, domestic violence, where there's actual physical hitting or, physical harm that can be taken as direct violence against women. And then when you look at structural violence, I think certain things, we up until recently in Sri Lanka, women couldn't be, in the train drivers. There are certain things that certain occupations that women are kept out of, right? That says that, okay, women can't do this kind of jobs. And those are structural violence. As in, like, in like much wider spectrum, you can see that even globally, women were not allowed to vote when men were allowed to. So that form of structural violence spread. And then in the society that you say, women shouldn't be doing certain things, or women should be doing certain things, and childbearing is a responsibility of a woman. If you are a woman, you must be a mother, right?
Yeah.
And if you are a woman, you shouldn't leave home until you're married. You should be staying with your parents. Or, I mean, all sorts of things, like, be it religious places, like, limiting access to women, be it institutions, all of those things. So I think these things are quite prevalent still in our society, and also objectifying, like looking at women as, like, sexual objects, basically. Because sometimes you can have a very smart woman or somebody who has a lot to add to a conversation, but some people in the room would only see her as an object. So to change those things, I think we need like much larger open dialogues about this, and addressing these subtle forms of violence, because we tend to look at physical violence as the most prominent form of violence, right? But the physical violence happens sort of at the end. If you're not looking at women as an object, or if you are raised to look at women as people who deserve the same level of respect as any other human too, you're not going to go that far, right? So I think, and also, like, and it wouldn't be a society that encourages that type of violence. And I think recently there were quite few, a lot of social media discussions around this too, right? And sometimes people say that street harassment happens because women give signals, right? And I think if anybody who has used public transport, at least within rush hours, it's we know how terrible it is. Like, personally, I think first time I experienced harassment on public transport, I was 5 or 6. My mother was taking me to kindergarten. I didn't even know what was happening. I definitely did not give any signals. And the next time I remember, I was first allowed to come home after school alone for the first time. I was about 9 years old. I was too scared to even tell my mother what happened, because then I would not be allowed to go on the bus alone again, right? And I definitely cannot give any signals. It's something I also realized as I grew up more, like, when I started working as an adult, that this has reduced quite a lot. So I thought, okay, maybe now I'm dressing more sensibly, or maybe I'm doing something right, or maybe, like, street harassment has reduced in the society. But later what I realized was, no, it's just that I have driven out of the target, the target victim group.
Yeah.
Because when you're in a school uniform, when you are a child, you are much easy prey. And I think that's what we need to really look into in changing in the society. Because we can keep saying that, like, this is because people, like, most men are sexually depressed, or, we can give all sorts of reasons for this. But ultimately what happens is we fail to look at another human as a human being. We fail to look at a child as a child, and we have failed to do that within family systems. We have failed to do that within institutions, schools, and we have failed to do that within the society and the country. So it's not just one thing that can shift things, right? Just because you get a woman to run a company as a CEO, it does not mean that whole company will not have gender-based discrimination or violence.
Because it's a larger audience, it's a larger society. Because even if a woman was heading an organization, that doesn't mean the other people are gonna just magically change overnight.
Exactly, right? Because the current system, or the current world we are living in, is highly opportunistic, right?
Yeah.
we are living in this economic system that actually incentivizes bad behavior. You're supposed to somehow make it. Doesn't matter how many people you hurt, how many lives that you destroy, doesn't matter. As long as you win, that's what matters. So it's all about competition. But if you really want to create a society that is safe for everybody, especially for women, we have to look at more collaboration instead of competition. We have to prioritize care instead of winning. So I think that those are things that we have to really take. We have to, one is, it's not something that's going to randomly happen. These are things that we'll have to actively take actions to change.
Yes, I think that's also something, because we tend to think that just because we do, for example, this podcast, I'd say just because we do one podcast, just one episode or series, it doesn't really mean it solves the problem. But it's something that we can do. It's a thing that we can sort of at least influence another human being, or even ourselves, even the people shooting this video. I'd say that's something that, as long as you can do a small change, I think that eventually sort of changes people's minds.
First, right, I think dialogue is what's really important, because if we are not, it's through dialogue that we can actually look at things from different point of views, right? Say that, I learned a lot of things from the grassroots communities when we go and speak to this. And that's through dialogue.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is, when we talk about discrimination, when we talk about violence, one thing that we can't ignore is power. Right.
Yeah.
And power is something that tend to be invisible.
Yes.
Right. Especially if you are privileged, you're not going to see your privilege. Right. You are not going to see that you are more powerful than the others. So it takes, you need to train your eye, you need to train your mind to actually see the power disparities within the societies, within the groups that you work with.
Yeah.
Right. And within your family or everywhere that you exist.
Because even so, if, for example, even between a teacher and a student, there's always that power dynamic.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's very sensitive and comes. It's sort of like when you're a girl child, you're sort of conditioned into that power dynamic, and that you become, I wouldn't say prey, but in the eyes of somebody who does do the crime, that's like a very vulnerable some age group.
Yeah, definitely, right? One thing, if you think about some of the gender-based violence that happens, right? A lot of time it's said that in Sri Lanka, our gender-based violence is hugely underreported.
Yes, because it's always mostly somebody
Yeah, so and also if you look at the legal system, that also doesn't support the victim. We've seen how people who report abuse or violence get victimized again and again, sometimes on social media, sometimes in the family. And we have this sort of culture of looking at a woman who has faced some sort of sexual abuse as damaged goods, right? And that could not only bring harm to herself, but also to her family members, right? So if you really look at the pros and cons, it's no wonder that these things go underreported.
Yeah.
And also we have a very hard time believing women, and proving a rape allegation or a sexual harassment within Sri Lanka's legal system is also quite difficult.
Yes.
So this happens because of the systematic and social violence that we have within our society against women. Right?
That's right. Yeah. Yes, I think that's something that's very important. And also, again, I know I've been saying this is something that is very important several times throughout this podcast. It's because I feel like we're having such a it's a very intellectual conversation, and it's sort of very powerful, because there's always, it's not the surface level things you think about. It's when you sort of see the root of the problem, and when you try to sort of go from the bottom up, you sort of see everybody's point of view, and that's something that's very, very powerful, I'd say. So your whole question is, Lani, so you work with so many young people and different communities through your consulting and research roles. And we know a lot of conversations, campaigns, and even activism now happen online. But the online world isn't always kind, especially to women. From what you've observed in your work, how is cyber harassment shaping the lives, confidence, and voices of young women today? And do you think we're really ready to protect people in the digital space, or are we still playing catch up?
We are not even playing catch up, I say, because if I talk about the legal background, the previous government brought in a bill called Online Safety Act.
Yes.
Right. Ideally, what they said is they're going to sort of bring in a solution to this cyberbullying and harassment and of sorts, right? But it did not answer those things, and it was actually used as a tool to kind of suppress voices, anybody who would bring in criticism to the current systems or the states. So that was one of the problems, bringing in a law that is not suitable enough or that is inadequate, or rather could be used as a tool of oppression.
Yes.
And the second thing is, I'd say, but we definitely need to find ways of protecting women online, not just women, but I think even the LGBTQ or the sexual minorities, right? But the amount of hate that is online, and sometimes it's also, you really start to think that could this actually be real? Because some of the things that is said online are never going to be things that could be said in a physical setup. If group of friends are sitting, or you're having tea with a group of friends, you can never imagine somebody saying that, right? Without any repercussion. But an online space gives you this platform to say things without really having to face repercussions.
Yeah.
Maximum somebody would comment against you, but but that's not a big deal.
There's also several people.
Yeah.
Coming together. It's like a whole gang of people coming.
Yeah, and there's no one doing anything about it. Of course, right? And there's also this fake profiles and pages that you don't really know whether there's a human behind it, or one human, or 5 or 6 of them or anything . And they also have political agendas, or different sort of objectives. You probably have seen this alpha male profiles, and profiles that sometimes push trad wife content. These are happening globally, and also happening in Sri Lanka in a very small scale. But to answer your question, whether the impact that these things have on activism, or women, or the voices of women, I'd say definitely do. I've been victims of smear campaigns. And this one time when there was a poster made with my pictures, that led out of pictures, from 12, 15 years ago, and compared to said something about me. I saw that and I told my mother, look, you're going to see this. Don't get upset. I know you will, so I'm telling you, do not, because, it is clearly Canadians. And she's like, oh, yes, it's I know. But the moment she saw it, she actually got upset.
Yeah.
Right? So, I can imagine how difficult it would be for somebody if, if your father you don't like what you're speaking out. And those things can really push people down, and especially drag you back on what you do. And at the same time, how I handle this online hate usually is, I remember that these people don't know me. But these things are said by people who don't really know anything about me, so I don't really have to care. But that doesn't mean that they don't affect. We are all human, right? So whatever said and done, the multiple hate comments, and when you're constantly bombarded with things, it's going to impact you. It's going to have some sort of impact on this. It's really important to have a circle that really knows you and reminds you who you are.
So moving on to our fifth question. Something we're trying to do through Someone's Daughter is to move people from awareness to action. From your work with youth, what do you think actually motivates young people to care about gender equality beyond the reposts and hashtags? And what can university students or youth groups like Growth Tract do to make a genuine impact?
Yeah. Thank you. So, I think in terms of what we can do as a youth, we can do is actually start looking at power disparities, I'd say. Because a lot of the times we see that we think that, okay, women should be given priority because it's said so, because, it's the novel thing to do, or because it's required by university administration, or, from like a corporate HR or something like. But to actually empower women and to actually achieve gender equality, we need to look at the other power disparities in the societies as well. Yeah, I think, like I told you at the beginning, before we started this, I wanted to bring little attention onto the title of someone's daughter. Yeah, right. And when we say that we should be prioritizing or we should be protecting women's rights or equality because they are related to supporting, that again sort of re-emphasizes the power rights here, right? What we do there is, think of her as somebody related to you, so you care about her. But we should be caring about women just because they're human, right? And I personally been in situations where I faced harassment or violence, and where my friend said, "Oh, thank God, my girlfriend wasn't here today." And I'm like, yeah. So if she's not related to you, you okay with that? So I think that if we really want to create a society that's equal, we need to look beyond these connections, and we really need to keep an eye on power and how with each relation, each connection, there is power within the system, right? And I think for university students, and especially for the youth, what we can do is sort of looking back at our society and our family structures too, right? I think especially within our parents' generations and our parents' parents, like grandparents' generations, we've seen a lot of gender norms. We've seen a lot of these gender binaries, and also women being limited to certain roles, right? I mean, we have phrases in our literature called 𝐷𝐸𝐿 𝐕𝐵𝐻. And I mean, these things do exist. Yeah. I mean, and we still see how women drivers are being commented on, right? So these things are there in society. And I think what is necessary is to understand and also have more dialogues and discussions about how we can't stereotype, and also how harmful these are. Because the more we discriminate women, we are also creating these unrealistic expectations from men as well, right? And when we assign these caring, kind, nurturing roles only for women, we are also taking those things away from men, right? We are saying, okay, men can't be caring. Men can't be nurturing or supportive. But that's not true. Both men and women have these qualities. And when we say that only men can lead, we're saying that women can't lead. But women can lead. It's true that women can lead and women can be caring, just as the same that men can lead and men can also be caring. Because at the end of the day, we are all human. Yeah, exactly. So when we talk about equality, what we actually talk about is wanting to create this equal ground for everybody to bloom within their capacities. Yeah. Right? It doesn't mean everybody has to do everything that everyone else is doing. Right? So, as a woman, I might have certain capabilities. I might be good at something. And you might be good at something that I'm not good at something. And there might be a man who's not good at what we are doing and want something else, right? I mean, so this existing gender norms and roles where women should be in the kitchen and women should be cooking. And that also takes the opportunity away from a lot of good men who love cooking and who are really amazing chefs. Their opportunities away. Right? Yeah. What we should instead to do is looking at everybody's capacities and capabilities and helping people nourish who they are as a human, as a person. I think like especially university students and like young people really have the opportunity to create these dialogues and changing the existing ways and norms.
Yeah. And really also to make use of the platforms that we're given. Because for example, as a Rotary Club, because we have this platform, we can do this work and we can send a message out there. And if it changes at least one life along the way, or at least changes one person's mindset, I think that's a huge deal for us as a society also. So that makes us come to the end of our podcast. And Swarani, thank you so much for joining with us. It's so refreshing to hear from someone who's actually out there doing all the work and also who's still staying very grounded and real about what he wants to work and the quality of work that she's doing. So stay tuned for our next episodes of Someone's Daughter What Do You Meet?